What's up, everyone? We are back for another episode of the Pair Program. I'm your host, Tim Winkler, accompanied by my co-host, Mike Gruen. Mike, how's it going, sir?
It's going all right. Waiting for you to surprise me with the topic.
Yeah.
That I'm going to look stupid, not really knowing the answer to, but go on.
Yeah. So we do this every time. I usually just try to pull something that's current, and Mike always tries to pry of like, hey, are you going to ask me some sort of a question in the beginning? So my question is, do you own any Peloton equipment?
No. That's an easy one.
No. What about Peloton stock? Were you a buyer?
No, I was not.
Okay, maybe for the best for you. I was a buyer and also own a Peloton bike, and the news comes out of another recall. So apparently their seats are not the best of functioning right now. So for those listeners out there, just be careful, be wary, pedaling on that Peloton. It's like their fourth recall now.
Yeah, I've heard there's been a few. That is your Peloton actually actively used, or is it just a coat rack, or like we always used our equipment for like the ironing, whatever ironing needed to get done, or dry cleaning?
It legit has been serving as a coat rack. So you're exactly right. Yeah, it's been collecting dust, but partially because it's just been moved out of our basement and into the garage, and we just haven't relocated ourselves up there. But anyways, good luck to them. I hope they can rebound. Well, let's give the listeners a quick heads up on today's episode. So today we are going to be diving into a topic that's very near and dear to us here at our community Hatchpad, and that is the topic of mentorship. So specifically, we want to kind of unpack some of these characteristics of tech mentors in early stage and high growth startup environments. We're going to discuss some of those qualities of mentors, share some specific examples of successful mentorship from our guests. And on that note, we have some really great guests to help us break down this topic. Greg Vincent is an engineering leader. He's built multiple engineering organizations from the ground up for several startups, has also worked with some really excellent larger tech companies like PlayStation and OpenTable. And we have F.A. Ogolo, a data science manager. He's worked with several startups as well, and a number of big tech companies like HelloFresh and SoftChoice. So thank you both for spending time with us today on the Pair Program.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Welcome.
All right. Well, before we dive in, we do kick things off with a fun segment called Pair Me Up. Here's where we're all going to go around the room. We'll shout out some complimentary pairings. Mike, go ahead and kick us off.
Yep. After doing some, less than some more cerebral ones, I've decided to go back to just keeping it simple: yogurt and blueberries. I do like some vanilla yogurt on some fresh blueberries. I've been trying to eat a little healthier these days, and blueberries apparently are really good for you. And and it turns out when I was a little kid, I didn't really like blueberries except for in yogurt. But as an adult, it turns out I do just like I don't know, my tastes have changed, and I just do like blueberries, but I still go back to the blueberries and yogurt. It's a nice combination.
Yeah. It's a safety valve right there, going with a food choice on the pairings.
Yeah, it's keeping it simple. I mean, I already used the mentoring one on a previous one, so that's true. I wish I'd saved it up.
Yeah, blueberries, they've been pretty frequent in my breakfast routine, but I've been putting them into oatmeal.
Yeah, that's a good call too.
Yeah, so dig some blueberries. All right, cool. I'll jump in. Mine pairing today is going to be dog, baths, and bribery. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We have a very large 95-pound Swiss mountain dog. Her name's Basil, and she is an absolute baby when it comes to getting bathed. So we had to pull out all the tricks, trying to convince her to get into the bath. And we'll go through a half a bag of treats sometimes if that's what it takes. But once she's in, it's kind of this sliding glass door shower. So she's stuck in there. She can't escape. But bribing her to enter the shower is really how it's all done. So we've become the bribery experts with Basil, and that's my pairing: bribery and dog baths.
Nice.
Let's pass it along to our guest now. Greg, why don't you give us a quick intro and tell us your pairing?
Sure. I'm Greg Vincent. I'm a technologist, software engineer, engineering manager. with around 30 years of industry experience. Much of that, at least from year 2000 onward, has been spent working at various startups. I think 7 of them in my career, primarily focused on consumer-facing web-based products. And my pairing, since you've clearly been by my LinkedIn profile recently, you may have noticed I'm a bit of a web performance fanatic. So my pairing is good web performance and great user experience. You cannot have great user experience without at least good web performance. The customer has to wait 10 seconds for your website to render. You've already lost that customer.
Yep.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah, definitely.
That's pretty relevant. Everybody, all of our listeners can probably relate to that and would validate that pairing. So, right on you. Cool. Let's pass it over to FA. FA, quick intro and your pairing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. So quick intro about myself. So yeah, my name's Fa. I've been working in the data space for a few years now. I'm getting close to that 10-year mark. During that time, I've kind of worked at a couple of different startups, a couple of large companies as well, kind of specifically building out data teams and helping kind of, take something that's an idea into a living, breathing concept that's just not a cost center, but, actually at the heart of the organization. So been really having a lot of fun there. For my pairing, I would say dinner and sports talk radio. In my own life, I don't think I can kind of do one without the other. So to the point where if I haven't eaten all day and I'm out, I make sure I wait till I get home. Even if I buy something on the way, I make sure I wait till I get home so I can kind of sit down and turn on some sports talk radio. That kind of helps me de-stress and kind of come back to my center. So big pairing for me there.
Okay,
that's a good pairing. My morning commute used to be sports talk radio and driving in the morning. But now that I don't commute, I don't get nearly as much sports talk radio.
Yeah.
And you're joining us from Toronto. So are you tuned into? Was it the Maple Leafs right now? Is that front and center for you, or what? Who are you tracking?
Yeah, unfortunately not. I'm actually tracking the LA Lakers, so all the way on the other side, on the other side of on the other coast. So
there you go.
So yeah, it's been good. Hopefully we close out the series tonight, and it can be a good day.
It's gonna be tight. Yeah, our producer has different thoughts. It looks like Nuggets in 5, huh? Okay. Well, good stuff. Well, let's go ahead and make the most of our time and transition into the meat of the discussion here. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about mentorship for tech teams in early stage startups. But before we dive into the characteristics of effective mentors, I think it could be interesting to first start with asking our guest what some of the specific challenges tech leaders face in these early stage environments. Then we can kind of use that as a jump off as to how mentorship can help address these challenges. So, Greg, let's start with you and in your experience. What have been some of the challenges that you've seen with people management as a leader of a growing engineering team with some of your past companies?
Sure. I mean, because you specifically mentioned early stage startups there, I would probably say the biggest challenge with mentoring in that environment is finding time. Because you have so many competing priorities. You've got so many feature requests coming from your product team. You've got operational issues. You're fighting fires in your production environment. Being able to find the time to sit down for an hour or however long it is with a mentee and devote your time, completely to that person, it can be a very big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a skill that you have to develop as an engineering leader in an early stage startup is figuring out how to manage your calendar, how to block off 30-minute units of time so you can sit down with your staff, whether that be one-on-ones or formal training or mentoring sessions. So yeah, finding time, juggling priorities. I think that is probably the biggest impediment or issue that arises in that environment.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's the home run answer right there. I mean, multitasking with limited resources, how do you go about prioritizing people when sometimes you're so, trying to be heads down and focus on your own task as well. Um, what about you, FA? I'd like to hear some of those people management challenges that you've experienced.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree with what was kind of spoken with what Greg said. I think a big part of it that I found in my career is, finding that balance of getting your team to kind of, focus on all the, firefighting that needs to happen, but then still keeping an eye on the kind of largest strategy of what exactly it is that we're trying to accomplish as a team, as a business, as an org. I think sometimes, especially in those high growth environments where there's, everything seems to be breaking all the time, it's very easy to kind of get into that world of, hey, we're kind of spinning our wheels, putting out fires all the time. And then from the issue then becomes like from a career development perspective, the people on your team don't start, it's easy for them to start to lose like, hey, what's actually the long-term play here? Where am I trying to get to? Am I getting exposed to the right opportunities, projects, skills, skill development opportunities that will help me get there, rather than just like, making sure that the light stays on. So I think those are some of the things that have kind of been kind of front and center for me at different points in my career as kind of like people in high growth environments. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, so some of those traits we just kind of knocked off there. So time management, multitasking. What would you say are some of these other skill sets that translate into folks that are effective leaders? So, for example, I'll shout out one that I've always felt has been helpful here at Hatch, but um, showing empathy is one that immediately kind of strikes respect. I think across departments from one individual to another, but trying to relate on a level that's um, try to put yourself in the shoes of someone else, right? And sometimes it's easy to bypass that when you're in your own lane. But once you're able to kind of level set with empathy, we've seen barriers kind of get broken down, and trust is built. What are some of those others that you would say has been effective for you as the, your organization is scaling, and maybe you're starting to get some of those other people in place? Maybe the time management will always be a thing, but what are some of those other traits, Greg, if you want to spitball?
Other than empathy, obviously communication skills, right? So
Yes.
to be an effective
Mhm.
teacher requires good communication and listening, an ability to adapt to the communication style of the mentee. Some of us learn more quickly than others. Some of us are visual learners. Some of us need to be more hands-on. So good communication skills, adaptable. The empathy sort of comes into play there with the ability to understand how somebody else learns,
Mm.
and then adapt your approach to the learning style of that mentee. So communication is certainly one. I've got quite a list of attributes here I could go through, but I don't want to monopolize the time here. So good communication skills.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that's probably like one that's very, very top of mind because it kind of sets the stage for everything you do in terms of like, hey, how do you teach? How do you make sure that you're passing your knowledge on, and even the information that you're getting from meetings that your direct reports may not necessarily be in. So making sure you're able to kind of synthesize everything that's kind of going on in the organization and kind of feed that flow downwards so your team knows why they're doing certain things. So I think I definitely agree on that one. I think another one that I would mention, which kind of relates to your point, Tim, is you know showing that you're genuinely interested in the development of the folks on your team.
Hmm.
Showing that you actually care about their learning, you care about their career, you care about helping them get to where it is that that they're trying to go. I know one of the things that I always did at different points in my career is whenever I bring on someone to my team, you know. Different people might have different opinions about this, but one thing I always tell them is like, "Hey, I understand that this may not necessarily be your forever 10-year job. But what I want to know is, what are the skills you want to develop in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? And I want to make sure that I'm exposing you to the right opportunities to get you those skills. Because right off the bat, what I found is that, hey, they can deduce that, hey, this person is genuinely interested in my career growth. And I tend to see that it changes the way that they approach their job. It's not just, hey, I'm just here, to just do whatever I'm doing. I'm here to actually learn. I'm here to actually develop. And, my manager or my leader or whatever is showing a genuine interest in me. And that tends to improve performance, at least in my own experiences. So I think showing that interest, that genuine interest in the people you work with and the people who are reporting to you has also been a key piece of leadership in my career.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I can't tell you how many times that's the opening conversations. Like, I don't expect this to be anybody's last job. So what are we going to do to maximize this? I want to make sure I'm giving you opportunities. I think one of the other ones that can also help establish trust is making sure that people know that, like, I'm okay experimenting and letting you fail, and we'll do this in a way that's like safe. Like, we're not going to make a big announcement about a promotion or a new role until we're confident that, like, it's going to be successful. So let's try it out. Let's experiment a little bit. Make sure we get feedback going both ways. I think that's another way to sort of establish trust. But that's, I think, a key part. And I think saying things like, yeah, I'm here for you for your long-term career growth is a great way of doing that. Totally agree.
Yep.
So something that we've seen a lot of internally here, and I'd be interested to hear how it translates into tech teams. That I imagine it's pretty sought after, but continuous learning is something that we've seen as a benefit being more and more encouraged, or we've seen a lot of technologists kind of like asking for that or wanting to get a little bit more clarity on what those types of benefits look like. Have you all been in environments or companies where, they've had a really effective kind of continuous learning program? I'd love to hear how that's played into, how you bake in mentorship, or has it been something that you've seen frequently or not so much? Greg, you can kick off with this one.
So it's been different at different companies. Obviously, at the smaller companies, I would say it's much more self-directed. It's like, we'll get a subscription to Pluralsight, and then you go off on your own and train yourself on whatever skill it is that you're looking to acquire. So I've been in environments where that is pretty much the norm. With the larger companies, they tend to have more formalized training programs. Some of them certainly have sent me and or like entire teams to be trained on a specific programming language or tool. You tend to find those kinds of programs at the larger companies with the larger training budgets. But since we're focused here on small startups, the norm that I've seen is pretty much is self-directed. It's like, here's a membership to some training platform. Take a couple hours a day for a couple weeks, and get yourself trained up on whatever skill it is that you're looking to acquire.
Greg, I think that's one of the shifts I've seen in startup world is the idea that, like, this isn't just something you have to do on your own time outside of work. It is we have the subscription. Our expectation is that you get to do this during your workday. We expect you to spend a couple hours a week or whatever. I think that in and of itself among small startups is one of the bigger changes that's been very positive.
Yeah, and as long as it's applicable to the role you're performing,
or
it
a
makes
role
sense
that
to
you
the
want
business.
or helps the business. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Correct.
We've actually, implemented internally here. Having our senior folks, not like on a weekly basis, but maybe like a once a month, they kind of host like their own kind of internal lunch and learn on something that they're particularly good in. And it gives them this feeling of, they like that idea of being a leader, and it's a, it's informal, we'll cover lunch, but everybody's going to attend for an hour and listen to Brittany kind of talk through, how she does XYZ. And so it's a creative way of kind of like tapping your resources to also continue to train other folks internally, but just being intentional about it.
It's a great example. I've done exactly this at my last role and several before it. In fact, at my last role, I did once a sprint brown bags with the entire team, where everybody would just come and share some recent project that they worked on, or talk about a new architectural pattern, a new tool. I want somebody to advanced Git commands, stuff like that. Not knowledge sharing just between members of the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
FA, I'm curious, within the data space, are there characteristics or personality traits that you see with folks coming out of that or coming in that space that are looking for specific type of mentorship, or is there a certain type of way of connecting with these individuals? Or I always am curious how that differs from sales departments, engineering departments, product departments, but you work pretty heavily within data. And anything specifically that you see that tends to mesh well with those folks?
I think like what I tend to kind of notice is, so because the data space is it's such an interesting space right now. Everyone, there's a large number of people kind of getting into it, and
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the training they tend to get, especially those who kind of go through the MOOC courses route, or like they do like a day, one of these day camp type of things.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes when they do come in, when they are successful at landing a role, there's kind of a lot of things that weren't kind of covered in those learnings, right? So a lot of times these courses will kind of tell you, hey, here's how you write SQL queries, all that kind of stuff, but then they kind of leave out a lot of times it's not contextualized within like a living, breathing organization. So what I tend to find is people kind of join an org, and then kind of the problem solving skill set that's kind of needed beyond kind of the technical skills, and even like the
Mm-hmm.
stakeholder management, managing those type, managing relationships with colleagues and all that kind of stuff. Those tend to be missing.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's usually a gap there. And then, once people start these roles in data, it's like, hey, oh, I thought I was kind of just going to be sitting in front of my computer all day writing SQL queries, but now I actually have to deal with the stakeholder. I have to kind of manage that whole project end to end, especially in smaller startups where you don't have like a proliferation of different types of teams. So you're typically handling a project right from start to finish. So including stakeholder management and all that kind of piece. So I feel like that usually tends to be the area where people are kind of looking for a lot of mentorship as like, hey, how do I kind of deal with a lot of the kind of the softer skill things, right? How do I make sure that, hey, I'm setting the right expectations, scoping this project correctly, not over promising, all those types of things. Those have typically been the types of conversations that I've had with people external, to the organizations that I've worked at, who've just kind of broken into the field and try to figure out how to manage all the other stuff that comes with working in the data space outside of like the technical skills themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think on that, and Greg, your background as a software engineer, I'm curious if you'd agree with this, but like in my experience, what I find that I'm mentoring a lot of the people, especially when they're in data or infrastructure, maybe not software engineering, is software engineering best practices. It's like, like, yes, you're doing this data, it's data engineering, but like, this is sort of a solved problem in software, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you apply something that we've learned in this other space? And I'm curious, Greg, has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. That a lot of that communication is communicating established, well-defined patterns, best practices. I've had several mentors just hand me a book. If you remember Rock's books from back in the early 2000s, the thick, massive red tomes. So a lot of that communication is, as an engineer with 30 years of experience, a lot of it is lessons learned, things that I've encountered in my experience in the industry, but also best practices, software architecture patterns, and things of that nature. Yeah.
I think the lessons learned thing, just to jump in there, that's another one that I love sharing my failures over the course of my career. Like the first time I made the install script that like deleted the entire web server and brought everything down and they had to restore from tape. Those types of stories, that again goes back to you show that vulnerability, you show that trust, it builds that relationship again. It sort of says like, hey, yeah, I expect, failure's okay, just learn from it.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree there. And I think just kind of on that point, I think it does really help. I found, create that space where people are willing to take, a little bit more risks, because knowing that, hey, like, even if this doesn't pan out, it doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, I'm going to get fired or anything like that. And I think, especially in the space that we work in, innovation risk kind of go hand in hand. So you want to make sure that, yeah, you're taking calculated risks, but, that people feel empowered enough to actually try to, continue to kind of push the envelope without feeling that, hey, if I screw this up, the business is gonna tank. Because
Mm-hmm.
the truth is most things are reversible. So you always just want to make sure that people are feeling empowered enough to to take those innovative steps without feeling any fear of like any fear of like getting fired or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's another like good thing to sort of mentor people on is this concept of it's about risk mitigation. It's not about being
Yeah.
safe. It's about understanding the choices you're making. I spend a lot of time like it's not that like I haven't touched code in a long time, but from a
Yeah.
coaching and mentoring perspective, the lessons are all the same. It's about mitigating risk or understanding like if you do this, what does that mean and why would we do that? Are we saving a penny or are we saving thousands of dollars?
Exactly.
What's the real cost of that savings? Those types of things that I think people don't really think through. Greg?
So, to your point of being able to admit failure, I do think another important attribute of a good mentor is low ego. Right.
Yeah.
So your process in deciding to become a mentor should not be ego driven. It should not be
Mm.
driven by what do I want to get from this relationship. It really is about serving other people. In its ideal form, mentoring is about giving yourself your time, your mental energy in the service of bettering other people. What you get in return is the satisfaction of knowing that you've helped someone else in the furtherance of their career goals, right?
Yeah.
But it should not be ego driven and all about what am I going to get out of this relationship.
Right. Although I will say, I think one of the things I do enjoy is getting the feedback about myself. And I think that, again, acting on feedback
Yes.
you're receiving, it is a two-way street. And
Mm-hmm.
which is
You're right.
right. It's still low ego, right? It's not about like, oh, I want to have thousands of people who point to me and thank me for having helped them and shaped their careers. It's no, I
Yeah.
want to help people. That drives me. That gives me like joy knowing that there's certain
Mhm.
people, but also learning and growing in my own self.
Better yourself in
Right,
the
exactly.
process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The process. Absolutely.
And I think even oftentimes with these types of relationships, like, as the mentor, you end up learning a great deal as well, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
as you're, especially like for me, like as I interact with different people who come from different backgrounds, who've kind of had different experiences, there is a certain level of insight that I get as well as to, hey, like maybe here's a different way to think about something, or here's a different way to do something, which I think helps you just continue to become a better person overall, right? So I think there is a unintended benefit that does come out of deciding to be an intentional mentor.
Sure, it's a good point. I mean, we're all constantly learning from one another, giving
Yeah.
and taking knowledge. You may be a mentor 1 minute to one person, turn around, and then you're being mentored by the person in the cube next to you, right? So it's
Exactly.
we're all mentors and mentees.
Yeah, I love the two-way street example. I am curious because it's something that we've experienced as a challenge, and I think it's every company's dealing with it differently. But now that we're, most companies are still working fully remote, and fully distributed teams, and I think there's a level of uh, personal touch that's lost, when we're all just looking at each other through Zoom cameras these days. How have you seen ways to kind of encourage a little bit more of that trust, even though it's a virtual relationship? Whereas in person, sitting somebody down, kind of having that connection. It's a little bit easier, I think, to make that relationship flourish. But anything that you've seen as helpful for you, navigating mentorship in a virtual world versus in person?
So
Yeah.
I've seen it. I'm sorry, was that for
No,
me?
no, no, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a number of startups that attempting to solve the problem in different ways. Some startups are doing on-sites quarterly, annually. Um, uh, I do one-on-ones. Obviously, in a distributed environment, I'm doing one-on-ones, through Teams or Google Hangouts or what have you. I do find that real-time communication through Slack or other tools it can help to build relationships. it's not that different than having a face-to-face conversation with somebody, in my opinion. But of course, having some face-to-face contact, quarterly or annually with an
Like
on-site is very
retreats or
helpful.
something.
Retreat,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think for me, some of the things that I've seen work effectively in my own experiences has been, yeah, like a lot of us are kind of limited to having these kind of virtual interactions. But one of the things that I try to intentionally do is to try to build the interaction, with a trying to account for or understand that individual kind of outside of the work environment. Like, hey, who actually are you, right, as a person? So I think like asking questions around, hey, like, even little things like, hey, what did you do this weekend? Or, talking about like a sports team if that's something that they're interested in, or just, trying to kind of figure out ways to make the relationship um a little bit more intentional and just outside of, hey, like I'm expecting you to deliver X, Y, and Z. I feel like that has kind of helped because what we usually these are types of conversations that would be a little bit more natural if we're kind of going into the same office and I see you on a Monday morning. The natural conversations like, hey, what did you do this weekend? Blah, blah, blah. So trying to like intentionally bring some of those kind of cool water cooler type of discussions into a virtual environment, I've seen for me, I've seen kind of helped a lot because it gets people to gets them a little bit more comfortable, gets them a little bit more personal, obviously within reason, and then it starts to kind of help that relationship evolve beyond just, hey, we're coworkers, but we actually know a little bit about each other, which kind of helps the communication as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the personal conversations and stuff. I mean, that's virtual, not virtual. It doesn't really matter. You want to have that gets back to establishing trust and that personalized relationship, taking interest in what's going on, because what's happening outside of work has an impact on what's happening inside work. And I just had a whole conversation. I had a one-on-one earlier this week with someone that was 100% about stuff that's just going on in their personal life. I'm here to listen. Yeah. It's fine. And it's nice that we feel comfortable sharing at that level. I do genuinely care. Or having a conversation about, like, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, whatever. On May 4th, one of my engineers is a big Star Wars nerd. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I got like Empire Strikes Back. So we had a whole like debate about like that stuff, and that was like our entire one-on-one. I was like, oh crap, I got to move on to the next thing. I guess hopefully we didn't have too much to actually talk about this week. But yeah, I think those types of things are important. The one thing I've yet to figure out, maybe Greg or F.A., if you have some concept, I miss the walking one-on-one. I used to, when we were all worked in the office, I would just go for a walk outside, get away from the office, just changing the context, not being in the office and just going on that walk. Has anyone found something that's sort of similar in the virtual world?
I can't say that I have.
I can tell you the most annoying thing is when somebody does their one-on-one with me while they're taking a walk in the park.
Are you trying to promote the metaverse right now, Mike?
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that's where I should put my stock. Put my money.
Oh, the context shift that you get by getting out of your seat and going outside and taking a walk is difficult to reproduce when you're sitting in front of a computer in your home office.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's where it comes back to, as a leader of a small company, obviously every company's budget is going to be different, but the investment in getting folks in person is invaluable. You can put a price tag on it. I can tell you firsthand, you can. We just did this last year. But I will say that the level of team morale coming out of something like that is just on a level that you'll never replicate in a virtual all hands. It's just it's just a very different thing. And those are like those magical moments that happen, from passing folks in the office hallway, which we no longer have. Those little small moments, those are what you try to bring back together through a quarterly, gatherings or an annual all hands or something like this. So I would say like that is one of the, when we talk about mentorship, I mean, we can go down a lot of different rabbit holes here, but this is more around going down the company culture path of, how to really build a strong culture where folks are tight knit and they feel like they're a part of something beyond just the work.
But I think that's important because I go back to early in my career. I think I mentioned this on previous episodes. My mentor, the one that I got early in my career, she was she had a marketing background, she was product background, like she wasn't in my direct line of reporting.
Right.
She gave me, she sort of took me under her wing a little bit, gave me some good feedback, and like that's the type of stuff that, I mean, we were on the same team, so it wasn't that far apart, but that's the type of stuff where I think that can happen in an office. So getting people together and getting those connections, because one of the things that I want to ask, this actually leads into my question, which is, as a manager, I feel my job is, there's mentoring and coaching and all of that. But at the same time, I can't be this person's career, like total mentor, because they report to me. Part of their job is learning how to manage up. I can sort of give them some of that, but I do think having somebody who's a little external, whether it's another engineer, someone outside the department, helping and mentoring is an important part. And I'm curious, like at startups, I struggle with figuring out how to get that right. You're too small to really create a formal mentoring program, but you want to encourage it. And FA, Greg, jump in. Like, what are your thoughts on how to get that sort of going beyond just you, the manager, mentoring people who report to you?
In a small startup environment. So my most recent environment, much larger than a typical startup, did have a formal mentorship program, and I was a participant in that. I've not seen that replicated in any of the small startups I've worked at. So, I mean, I would say it takes intention and it takes ownership. You need to identify somebody who can manage a program like that. It's certainly possible to do, but it takes some effort and some intention.
Yeah, I think like some of the things that I've been able to do my time at HelloFresh was we didn't have a we don't have a formal kind of mentorship program as of yet, but some of the things that I was able to do was identify what are the areas that I feel like this person needs to kind of develop in. And as I mentioned, more often than not, it tends to be kind of on the softer skill side and things like that. Because with the technical development, I think that's kind of falls within my purview to make sure that we're kind of training up and all that kind of stuff. But I think with some of the other things, what I've done is kind of identify other either people or leaders in the organizations who may sit in a completely different function, but they do possess those skills that I feel like this person needs to kind of lean into. And then that way, I've kind of set up a few like kind of informal mentorship relationships that way. So be very clear about to the person who's going to be doing the mentoring, like, hey, here are some gaps that I feel like this person has. I've kind of identified them in you, and I think you'd be great in kind of helping kind of coach them up a little bit. Is this something that you're interested in? Kind of yes or no, because obviously you don't want to just kind of dump something on someone's plate that they're not interested in. So I think what has helped me is being very upfront about, hey, here's the gap that I think you're able to help them fill. Here's kind of like what I'm thinking in terms of what how that gap can be filled. Is it something that you're interested in? So I think that way, like even without a formal mentorship program, there's still opportunities for you to kind of informally, set people up with other leaders in the organization that will help them kind of fill those gaps.
Have either of you looked at, sorry, Tim, have either of you looked at some of the external places, like maybe not within the company, whether it be, there's different external.
There's ADP list. I think maybe one of them.
There's a handful. Tim,
yeah, that was actually gonna say, like, externally, direct them to, like, put together a resource guide of like, hey, like Rand's leadership is one that we frequent. I think I might have mentioned it to you, Greg, as well, but it's a great outlet for folks that are in resource constrained organizations, right? But they want to tap into other mentors that are helping with one-on-ones. Like, oh, how do you do your one-on-ones? It could be anything from coaching. There's a couple of in here about intros, market research, product management, staff engineering, startup CTO. These are all super relevant, and I always plug them because I think they've been great. They've helped us, like, get good guests on the podcast, because again, it's all about folks that are interested in giving back. And I think we have a couple of others that we had a short list before, but yeah, if there's any others that you all have seen that have been effective, feel free to shout them out.
Rands is open to any and everyone, right? So
Yeah.
I know of several others, but they tend to be
Pay for.
owned and managed by VCs,
Yeah.
right? So first round would be one of them, but there are many others
Yeah.
in the same vein. I think I had a coworker was working with one called ADP List at my last job too. So I know that there are a number of new commercial services that will
Yep.
pair a mentor
Mhm.
and a mentee, but the free one, Rants, I think is I think the best resource that I know of that's completely free and open to anyone.
I'd love to, before we transition to the next segment, I'd love to just hear, in a couple of minutes from both of you, who's a mentor that, really helped you out in your career. You don't have to drop their name, but, a little context on, somebody that really played a part in your development. I'd love to hear the quick hit on it.
If you don't mind my jumping
Yeah, go
in
ahead.
here. So the first that I can recall goes back to 2000 and my time at lifeminders.com, which is a startup in Herndon, Virginia.
Huh, cool.
There was a senior software engineer there who kind of took me under his wing, showed me the ropes, provided a lot of technical guidance. I would say mostly technical guidance related to the projects that I was working on. It's an email marketing firm, so I was building an SMTP mailer and a balanced email management system. He helped me quite a bit, provided a lot of direction, guidance on system architecture, design patterns, etc. And I mentioned earlier, lent me a bunch of books on different programming related topics. He was, I would say, probably the first and probably the greatest mentor I've had in my
That's
career.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I think for me, I think probably during my time at HelloFresh, so our chief product officer, kind of same thing, kind of decided to kind of take me under his wing. His mentorship was more so as I transitioned into leadership. And kind of people management, I think that's where his mentorship was kind of invaluable, because he kind of started to get me to understand, especially like as a technical leader. I think it's something we could all kind of relate to. As you start to kind of venture into the world of people management, that weird dichotomy between like, hey, how hands on keys, how much hands off keys work do I keep doing versus like taking my hands off the keys and kind of letting my team, trusting my team to kind of do what they need to do. So I think that was a balance that I was having a hard time kind of striking. So he was able to kind of, help me get through that, give me some really great tips on, how to think about my team strategy, how to develop a roadmap, how to kind of intersect myself with all the different leaders in the organization to ensure that my teams were always delivering things of value. So I think from a leadership standpoint, I would definitely say that's been one of my stronger mentors. I would say another person kind of in the same vein, and just especially in the sense of kind of getting me to expand my mind to what's possible, is actually someone who's actually been on this show, Nick Petty, over the CTO over at Claire. Was actually introduced to him through a kind of a local organization here in Toronto. Kind of did the same thing of pairing people with mentors and stuff like that. And him and I have been in contact ever since. So I think we met during the pandemic, and he's been fantastic. And kind of getting me to think about my career, be very intentional about the things that I decide to pursue, the opportunities that I decide to take, and things like that. So I'd say those have been two probably very, very influential mentors for me.
And bonus points for giving a pair program plug there
Yeah.
with the former guest. That's awesome. I love to
Yeah.
hear that.
What about you,
Yeah,
Tim?
it's
I know there is there a mentor or anybody in your background?
yeah. So mine would have been more around entrepreneurship. So my first job out of college, I met my first business partner. His name's Chad. He actually lives out in Southeast Asia, out in Thailand. But he was, we both met in an agency. But prior to that, he was kind of running his own little thing as a young entrepreneur, recruiting nurses from Southeast Asia, kind of bringing them into the States. And he had just kind of jumped out of his comfort zone, right? And he had kind of been doing that for a year or so. And I came into this work environment. I was, pretty nervous coming right out of school, and we would spend a lot of time after work just kind of brainstorming. He would tell me about his travels and some of the stuff that he had done, and His big advice to me was, start being comfortable with being uncomfortable, like get out of your comfort zone. And the sooner you can do that, the more doors will open for you. And so sure enough, we came together and he convinced me to go out to Indonesia and start up an offshore recruiting company when I was 25. And it was the most uncomfortable thing I'd ever done at that time. But I firmly believe I wouldn't be in the running a small business if I hadn't kind of met him and him playing that kind of integral piece in my life. So and I'm still friends with him today, and his kids are little Muay Thai fighters out in Thailand right now, and I keep tracking them. And but yeah, he's someone that's stuck with me for a long time, and it's something that I've always leaned into, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Well, let's transition into this final segment. This is a fun segment we call the 5-second scramble. This is going to be a quick, rapid fire Q&A. Trying to keep the answers under 5 seconds if you can. If you can't, we will be gentle with you. We won't air horn you and or boo you off stage. But I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Fa. Let's jump into it. So, okay. What is your favorite aspect about working for an early stage startup?
Opportunity for innovation. The canvas is blank and you can paint it almost however which way you want.
Oh, it's beautiful. What would you describe as your ideal startup culture?
Egoless environment where everybody's open to feedback, everybody's open to working together, and building something really cool. Yeah.
What professional advice would you give your younger self just starting your career?
Oh man, problem solving is probably the most important thing. Outside of the technical skills and even the soft skills, having an aptitude for problem solving is key.
Do you have a favorite book or podcast on leadership that you lean into?
Leadership. I recently read Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger. Great book. Yeah, I think that's been one of the more helpful ones recently. Yeah.
He's back in the seat of CEO too, isn't he?
He is.
Bob replaced Bob.
Bob, exactly.
What do you love most about yourself?
Wow. Okay. I would say, I think I'm a glass half full type of person. So enthusiastic, optimistic. Thinking we can definitely do anything that we put our minds to, and yeah, I think that's probably my favorite trait about myself.
Hey, need more of that. I love it. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had an egg sandwich and a cup of coffee.
Did you go cheese or any meat on it?
No cheese, just straight eggs.
Straight eggs.
Yeah.
What's the worst fashion trend that you've ever followed?
Ooh, probably a fanny pack from back in the day. Yeah,
that's a strong one.
I'm pretty sure those are back in style too.
Yeah. These days they're like all across. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Who would you say? Well, now that I know you're a sports fan, who would you say is the greater GOAT? Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, or Tom Brady?
Ooh, I'm a Giants fan, so definitely not Tom Brady. So I'd probably say Michael Jordan. Yeah.
Okay. Jordan or Kobe?
I think Jordan was before my time, so probably Kobe. I would lean towards Kobe because I saw him play. Yeah.
That sounds like a Lakers fan.
Yeah.
What is a charity or corporate philanthropy that's near and dear to you?
A friend of mine started a charity a few years ago called Youth in Diaspora. The goal of it is trying to, fund educational initiatives back in our local country of Nigeria. So he's been kind of pushing a lot on that front and helping kids in very, very dire circumstances, get access to education. So that's been one that has been near and dear to my heart.
Awesome. Yeah, we love to plug these philanthropies as well in our when we post the show notes. So we'll get that info from you.
Awesome.
If you had one day left to live, would you rather spend it with Morgan Freeman or Denzel Washington?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think both of them are very, wow, there'll be lots to learn, lots to discuss. But I'd probably say if I had to pick Denzel Washington, I think I'm more of a fan of his. Yeah.
Okay. See,
Yeah.
there's a subliminal message here too, which means you're going to go out hard on your last day, whereas
Yeah.
Morgan will put you down slowly.
Yeah.
It's your last day. What's left to learn? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
Hey, maybe you want to go out a wild night on the town, Mike. Guns blazing.
Exactly.
Yep.
What is one country that you would recommend everyone travel to once in their life?
Peru. I was there a few years ago. Did the whole Machu Picchu hike. It was beautiful.
Oh,
I
sweet.
would recommend it. Yeah.
That's on the list. That is a great answer. All right, good stuff. That's a wrap for UFA.
Awesome.
You are all done. Greg, let's get to you. Are you ready?
All right, let's do it.
All right. What professional advice would you give your younger self if you were just starting out your career?
Take better care of your health. As a programmer for 30 years, I've done quite a bit of damage to my wrists and have had surgery, and to the tendons in my forearm, where I also had surgery about 7-8 years ago, and in addition to multiple steroid injections. So take very good care of your wrists and your forearms if you're a programmer, because as a programmer, you're already set up for RSI or repetitive stress injury just due to the nature of your job. As you get older, if you're feeling pain in your wrist and pain in your forearm, you need to see a doctor immediately, and you need to jump on it quickly and resolve it, or the pain and suffering will compound year over year over year until you get to the point of needing surgery, and that's what happened in my case.
Or just becoming a manager.
or just transition to manager. Absolutely.
Good advice. What is the biggest challenge facing startup founders in 2023?
I think the fundraising landscape has changed quite a bit. I think purse strings have tightened quite a bit. So I would say it's probably on the fundraising side. Although, I mean, there seem to be certain businesses, anything AI related, which seem to be getting funded fairly easily, but a lot of other areas that are not. So I would say the fundraising.
Yeah, I agree. What would you say is a company value that is important to you?
A company value. It's a common thread. It's probably run through the last 3 or 4 companies, is act like an owner. I've encountered quite a few engineers who don't take ownership, don't take pride in their work, throw it over the wall and consider it done. And after that, don't really care about it. So act like an owner.
Cool.
Yep.
What would you say is a book or a podcast on leadership that has resonated with you?
Hopefully I won't get too much flack for saying Prop G, but it's one of the podcasts that I listen to on a fairly regular basis. Just has a lot of lived experience with startups in particular. So I think there's a lot to learn there.
Cool. What is a charity or corporate philanthropy that's near and dear to you?
I think I would have to say the Trevor Project, which helps at-risk LGBTQ kids. I've been a donor for some time, and it's a worthwhile charity.
Awesome. Yeah, we will also post that in our show notes as well. All right, lighthearted twist. Favorite cereal?
Captain Crunch.
Oh, strong.
That's the right.
With the crunch
berries.
With the crunch berries, please. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
If you could live in a fictional world from a book or a movie, which one would you choose?
Oh gosh. It's going to be science fiction, of course. I guess I would say Star Wars. Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, do you validate that answer?
I mean, I love the world. I don't know that I want to live in it. It's gritty and it's dirty. I'm probably going to die. That's
violence.
I kind of like Avatar, the Avatar world. Do you have a celebrity doppelganger?
Did anybody watch Ally McBeal 20 years ago?
Yes.
I would get stopped on the street, literally, every single day. Yeah. I don't even have to say the name, do I?
I mean, for the younger listeners, you might have to, but...
Okay. There was a character, I think Billy was the name of the character.
Oh,
and I would literally get mistaken for that guy all the time.
That's funny.
That's great. Do you have any phobias or irrational fears?
There is. I would say I'm not super comfortable speaking to large crowds.
Hey,
yeah,
number one fear out there.
Yeah, I did a conference appearance in front of about 2,000 in 2015, and
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I got through it, but it was not easy.
It's good for you.
I'm in the same way. I'm nervous even just with 3 people here. So it's a common trait. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
The ability to print money on demand.
Gonna run some economies, huh?
That's solid. Wow.
Yeah,
that's great. That's the first time I've heard that answer. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and last one. With Bob Iger on the mind, what is a favorite Disney character of yours?
Ooh, that is tough. Let's see. It's been quite a while. I think I'm going to have to go with Donald Duck. Yeah,
Donald Duck.
Love the voice.
Yeah, that's a classic. That's an original too. It's
love the sassy, the sassiness and the voice.
Yeah, you can't steal like some new like Han Solo kind of new retro Disney character. I like you went with a classic
answer.
Yeah. That's it, guys. That's a wrap. Thank you both so much for joining us. You've been fantastic guests, and again, tackling a topic that is super important for technologists, not only in startups, but working within any environment, really, with mentorship. So, thank you both for joining us on the Pair program.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.